Hi everyone, it's wonderful to be here, and I really want to begin by thanking the organisers for this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm a paediatrician and an immunologist, but today I'm mostly talking to you in my capacity as the president of In Vivo Planetary Health. The goal of this talk is really to frame child health in the wider context of all of our interconnected grand challenges and really underscore the importance of taking a developmental and life course and transgenerational approach to health. As paediatricians, we are ideally placed to reinforce the perspective that taking the long view will not only change our future, but also who we are right now. I'm also going to talk about the need for imaginative solutions that build on the very best of human nature, the deeper values that unite, empower, and refocus priorities of individuals and groups towards healthier futures. The Anthropocene has been an era of profound ecological imbalance affecting health on all scales. Humanity has affected planetary systems to such an extent that our own well-being is under threat. Declining human health really reflects ecosystem disruption on all scales. So restoring health must depend on an ecological perspective, and that must begin from the very first moments of life. So planetary health is concerned with far more than climate change and biodiversity loss. It really spans all systems on all scales, from the largest to the smallest, recognising that these are all interconnected and all are interdependent. Our physical, social, economic, political and spiritual climates are all inextricably linked to human health. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, we were dealing with a global NCD crisis inextricably linked to the erosion of all of these interdependent ecosystems. This pandemic in slow motion really closely parallels environmental changes at the macro and the micro scales, and virtually all of these conditions have their origins in very early life. We're seeing progressively younger phenotypes with childhood epidemics of metabolic and immune disorders, emotional distress, and anxiety. Allergy is one of the most striking measures of early environmental impact. In countries like Australia, we see 1 in 4 infants now with some form of allergic disease. So this is really a sentinel, an early indicator of environmental impact on our immune health, a canary in the coal mine with much wider implications for human and environmental health. Our birds are also quite literally dying. We've seen massive declines in bird species as an indicator of ecosystems' health at a much larger scale. We're seeing a parallel collapse of insect species and pollinators, which of course are integral for the entire global food web. The health of every ecosystem depends on the health of its smallest parts, such as the microorganisms which are critical to large-scale systems like climate biology, right through to the health of each individual organism. But urbanisation has had large-scale effects on biodiversity loss, echoed through to the microecological scale, from soil microbes to our own personal microbial ecosystems. Allergy was one of the first fields to link biodiversity loss to human health, particularly the loss of microbial biodiversity and immune health. Now, of course, we see that dysbiotic drift is implicated in many NCDs, as we see evidence of disappearing microbes in many westernised populations. In other words, there's a direct line between life in distress at the cellular scale and life in distress at the planetary scale, with drivers of inflammation and dysbiosis echoed through on every level. In another sense, as paediatricians, we can regard this as failure to thrive on all scales. The omics revolution has given us biological measures of the total exposome and ways in which we can draw direct lines between microscale and planetary systems. This calls for much greater awareness of these complex bidirectional relationships. We really must take an integrated perspective that recognises how factors in our wider environment echo through on every level and influence our biology across time, including the epigenetic transgenerational effects on our DNA. The ecology of the early environment really determines our lifelong health, including our microbial diversity, nutrition, nature, and social interactions during this critical window of development. Immune health in particular is core to all aspects of physical and mental development, and it determines both our acute and our chronic vulnerabilities. Our greatest battle of the 20th century was arguably our war on microbes, and it has taken us decades to learn that this is not the solution and is actually implicated in the epidemic of so many early onset NCDs, raising, of course, new concerns about the increasing use of detergents, disinfectants, and antibiotics. In many ways, we're looking at an extinction of experience. We've seen significant changes in human behaviour with modernity, with progressively more time indoors, less contact with biodiversity and natural environments. And this has significant implications in the post-COVID era. Technology culture, while incredibly important for situations like this, does have implications. We have digital displacement of in-person experiences, nature and social interaction, which is all having impacts on our physical and mental health. We know that screen time promotes many pro-inflammatory behaviours and risks for NCDs, including stress, our eating behaviour, nature deficit, as I've mentioned, inactivity and sleep disturbance. Our extinction of experience is multidimensional, and usually the focus of these discussions is much more on the toxic exposures, the increasing presence of detrimental factors. And we place far less emphasis on the increasing absence of protective and buffering factors, such as nature, traditional foods, physicality, community, positive emotions, mindfulness, and spirituality, which are often neglected in this conversation. This really highlights the importance of ecological solutions for lifelong resilience. So we need much more focus on the positive factors. For example, promoting nature connection has multiple benefits in children, ranging from dietary habits, exercise, sleep, performance, social and emotional assets, and of course, skin and gut microbiome diversity. But it also creates a greater sense of environmental concern. Our goal must extend beyond merely the absence of disease, but to thriving and flourishing on all scales. As paediatricians, we are particularly attuned to concepts of thriving and the importance of positive emotional assets in addition to physical environments. And we are ideally placed to promote the long-term health benefits for individuals and societies and address child health with planetary health in mind. All of these physical and emotional assets promote immune resilience and protect and buffer inflammation, disease, and premature aging. And this is the basis for our local effort, the Origins Project. This is a large community cohort of 10,000 families with the overarching aim of a healthy start for a better future. And we're already more than halfway through recruitment. We have both observational domains and nested harmonised interventions. And in general terms, our interventions are aimed at minimising the negative or adverse exposures, restoring the positive and protective factors, and building a community that enables this. In particular, we're interested in upstream approaches to wellness behaviour to see whether these have a flow-on effect to the usual risk factors, anticipating multiple benefits for individuals, families and communities. So please visit our website for more information. We believe that local projects are part of the solution in every community, and that a greater sense of belonging and purpose improve physical and mental health of individuals and society and buffer the stress of social disadvantage. All of this underscores the power of interconnected grassroots strategies for planetary health as a path to new normative values, and emphasises that connectivity is a vital part of the solutions. It's time to overcome the fragmented territorial approaches and siloed thinking. As major obstacles in understanding health of all systems, we need a much more dynamic understanding of life, which empowers more agile, cohesive, caring and sustainable solutions. Starting at the grassroots does not just mean foundational ecosystems. It also means addressing the foundational value systems and getting to the roots of the problems where all change must begin, at the deep stories that shape cultural identity, belief systems, and normative values. The grand challenges of the Anthropocene are largely of our making and ultimately stem from human attitudes to each other and to our environment. The solutions must also be of our making, recognising the interdependence of these challenges. Concepts of planetary health recognise these interwoven complexities, but they rarely confront the underlying value systems that created these interconnected problems in the first place, or the attitudes that perpetuate them. Too often, the agenda is dominated by the very worst of human nature, while the best of human nature is neglected and devalued. And I'm talking about the importance of kindness, hope, love, and mutual respect, the deeper values that unite, empower, and refocus priorities of groups and individuals. In doing so, we have failed to recognise that this is part of the problem and that these are arguably our greatest assets in overcoming our biggest challenges. We need to normalise more mutualistic creative approaches, including the perspectives of traditional cultures. We must address the climate of growing conflict and confusion, which has long-term impact on physical and mental health and even biological ageing. Our society encourages a futile search for happiness rooted in a world of wasteful consumerism, and the endless hollow search for more usually only leads to unhappiness and disillusionment. Not to mention the gross economic disparities on the impact of health of individuals and societies, which only perpetuate inequalities. We need a greater appreciation that social status signals in early childhood adversely affect long-term attitudes and health behaviours, including our eating behaviours. Much of this is a reflection of the dysbiotic drift in underlying value systems, the increasingly narrow focus on economic and financial value, and a normative shift towards narcissism and self-interest. Broken systems are damaging health, the social fabric, and natural environment, and broken spirit is manifest in increasingly polarised agendas. Polarisation is often manufactured and magnified by vested interests on all sides. We're seeing an infodemic of propaganda and misinformation, manipulating perceptions. A creed of power and greed has dominated the global agenda, with power concentrated in the hands of a few. In any ecosystem, this dynamic is unsustainable. It is vital that we redefine progress and growth in much more meaningful ways and recognise that not all innovation is improvement. We must place greater value on deeper wisdom and ask ourselves, are we being wise ancestors? Technology, of course, is a vital part of the solutions, but we must apply this with much more mutualistic value systems as a compass. And to quote Renee DeBoz, lest we end up with a jumble of technologies and counter-technologies that smother body and soul. So the planetary health agenda should equally consider our social and spiritual ecology as it does the ecology of our natural systems. Planetary health, therefore, is much more than an ecobiological framework. It speaks to the emotional and spiritual bonds between person and place and underscores the importance of stories of place that speak to the heart as much as the intellect. Our future depends on narratives that promote attitudes and behaviours that will shift the health trajectory, especially in our children. The power of narrative lies not just in how we see the world, but how we see ourselves and our power to change this. And listening to the voices of children is really a neglected dimension of this agenda. Our focus is so intent on helping them that we forget the ways in which they help us. Children have a way of reminding us what is important and helping us see the world in inspiring and refreshing new ways. Children provide a very powerful door not just to have these bigger conversations for change, but to the inspiration we need to fuel us on that path. Individuals have enormous power, but there is every effort to maintain the status quo and distract us with false, polarizing narratives which promote powerlessness and hopelessness. It is time to raise awareness of the algorithms behind the curtain. Awareness changes everything, and we can lift that curtain. Awareness is really the first step towards transformation as individuals and societies. It allows us to see both challenges and possibilities and make meaningful choices. We need greater mindful awareness of our own attitudes to ourselves, to others, and to all things. This means expanding from simply an intellectual perspective to the true experience of connectivity and the awe, the wonder, the gratitude, and hope. It means unleashing our creative power to imagine a better future, recognizing that our thoughts and shared imaginings are more powerful than we realize. In the coming years, we at InVivo seek to place a much higher value on creativity, imagination, and self-development in solving challenges at all scales, recognizing that these also mediate social responsibility and environmental concern. It's time, in other words, to employ all of our resources and value our humanity as much as our technology, and using our hearts as well as our minds should not really be such a radical concept. We seek to emphasise the importance of cultural expression, artistic creations and narratives in linking the health of people, places and planet, as we encourage people to work in the spaces between silos of expertise. And this, of course, is something that everyone can be part of, because improving planetary health should not be by invitation only and all are qualified to join. Changing mindsets can change everything. It's the real roots of everything we do as individuals and societies, and the most powerful thing we can change as individuals. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a global tipping point. The economic fallout alone means that we can't simply return to where we were. It's a time to reassess collective values, priorities, our sense of self and community, hopefully as a gateway to a more resilient future. It has been a time of sudden and unprecedented change and shown us just how personal planetary health can be. It's also shown us how rapidly we can change our priorities and behaviours. It's been a wake-up call to so many broken and dysbiotic systems and an opportunity to shift that ultimate trajectory. Restoring resilience after a pandemic should not just be about restoring the status quo. It must be about restoring hope and purpose, more vibrant communities, opportunity and equity, and social and economic and environmental justice. In so many ways, the impact of the pandemic has been so great because our systems have been so unhealthy. That applies at both the level of our personal immunity as well as at the planetary scale. For all of us, this has been a time to reassess our personal priorities, an opportunity to change the way we live on the other side. The century-old words of Japanese poet Masahide remind us of how traumatic events can provide new opportunities for awareness that lead to wisdom and growth. With my barn burned down, nothing obstructs my view of the moon overhead. And this is at the heart of contemporary post-traumatic growth research, which goes beyond recovering to a previous state or situation, but to one of far greater awareness, purpose, meaning, and appreciation of life. And certainly 2020 has been a year of mass trauma. It has unmasked many chronic problems, and breaking that status quo may also provide opportunities to accelerate change. So what applies to personal growth may equally apply at the collective scales. So the hope is that this will lead to new awareness for growth at all scales, because what once seemed impossible has now become essential. The aftermath of this mass trauma provides opportunities for large-scale post-traumatic growth, reappraisal of values with higher levels of environmental and social concerns, and greater awareness of new possibilities and shared wisdom. So certainly we can consider what we do as individuals as we strive to be part of the solutions through our personal commitment to shaping change in all aspects of our daily life. But we can also contribute to a greater change narrative, recognizing that connectivity and shared purpose magnify change. We know that when we begin any journey, even small changes can signal important shifts in our long-term health trajectories, and that applies to our personal health behaviours as well as our wider value systems. So we should not underestimate the ripple effects of small changes. We've just seen the enormous consequence of the pandemic and the ripple effects of contagions, of fear, social and economic upheaval. Now more than ever is the time to initiate a contagion of positive change. Imagining the future is the first step to getting there, and we might all begin by asking ourselves what kind of world we want to live in. And this is very much the agenda of In Vivo Planetary Health and the activities of Project Earthrise. And we want to invite all of you to join our ongoing campfire discussions and the repository of many virtual sessions on a wide range of topics, and to invite you to join our next annual meeting in December this year. We also welcome submissions to our journal challenges. And finally, to conclude, I want to play a brief 90-second video that captures so many of the things that I've been talking about today. And I want to once again thank the organisers for this invitation and the wonderful opportunity to share with you today. Thank you very much.